Hi class. This PowerPoint presentation will be a collection of notes that I put together as I read your intermediate drafts. And the goal of it is to give you a set of things that could improve your paper and for you to read them, interpret them, and see if these comments apply to your specific paper. Of course, I've also given you some notes on your intermediate drafts, but not as in much detail as I'll provide you here. And the point is, sometimes in our intermediate drafts, I'll put a comment in the margin. For example, it might say, this paragraph needs more development. It might say, this paragraph could use some information from an expert source. So maybe the student goes and fixes just that error. For example, maybe I mark, you need to use comma rule number 1. So you insert that one single comma, but very often what happens is that students don't apply those comments to the whole paper and see, well, do my other paragraphs need more support? Do I need to use this comma other places? And so what the goal of this lecture is to give you some ideas, some ways to revise that you will have to be the one to decide if they apply to your paper or not. This is a good move for us at this point in the course because I'm not going with you to your next class. I can't revise all of your papers for you. The best thing that we can do is to teach you how to apply writing feedback or the traits of good writing to your own papers. So the first thing we're going to look at is structure. Your paper has to demonstrate sound structure. Think about when we wrote the academic summary and how you had to identify segments of ideas or chunks of ideas in the essay. And all those ideas, in fact, most of those ideas were longer than a single paragraph. I should see that same principle at work in your paper, that body paragraphs 1 through 3 define your topic and give its history. Body paragraphs 4 through 6 are the first 3 reasons that we should vote in every election if your paper was on voting rights or something. And then paragraphs 4 through 6 should be the effects of not voting. So there should be like ideas grouped together so that your structure unfolds in a very strategic way. I did not see that in a lot of papers. I saw a lot of ideas bounce back and forth. Okay, so really work on making sure that there's strategic flow to your paper. You also want to have a thesis. The thesis should be early on in your paper at the end of the introduction. That's usually for most of the papers at the end of the first or second paragraph. And it should have a purpose, which is a value for your reader. What are we going to take away? Why is reading this paper going to enrich your reader? Okay. Your thesis should not announce your topic. Here's an example of a thesis that announces. In this paper, I will demonstrate how climate change is a hoax. Generally, in this kind of paper, you don't need to announce. I know in some published writing you will occasionally see an author do this, but for the purposes of our papers and most papers you will write in college, you don't need to announce. Instead, you could say something like, research reveals climate change is a hoax. Okay? Your paper should have a purpose, and a good purpose demonstrates that you understand your audience, that you know what the audience needs to read or what will interest them, what will be a benefit to your reader. And the highest scoring papers not only have a thesis, but they also have a purpose. And the purpose can show up in the introduction with the thesis, or it might be something that you get to in your conclusion. Here's a thesis or a purpose statement that would work with our topic. A proper and historical understanding of climate change will change America's perspective and galvanize many to enact environment-saving strategies. I would like to get the second change out of there, but nonetheless, you can see what will, if I read this paper and I have a proper understanding of climate change, what will it do? Okay, it could mobilize the reader, get the reader to do something. You should know which sentence is your thesis. If you aren't clear which sentence is your thesis, I won't be either. You should be able to go, this paragraph right here, that's my thesis. This is the idea that my whole paper will go on to prove. So really know where that is. It should stand out and be emphatic. Okay? The most important words in your thesis should be its last words. Lodge the most significant idea toward the end. Make sure that your paper demonstrates synthesis or synthesizing sources. This is the title of the assignment, a synthesis assignment. And these are the chapters that you had to read in a sequence for academic writing, or how to bring multiple sources on a single topic together in a paper. This is a very important skill, okay? You must use research in your paper. I read 3 or 4 papers that had no research at all. What it looked like is the student maybe had read about the topic and was well versed in it, perhaps from a long time of reading about that topic, perhaps from personal experience, but there was not a single source cited. I have to be clear that would be a failing paper. The goal of this paper is to take sources and to use the ideas of experts to support the thesis of your paper. You need to use examples from those sources, summaries. That's why we learned summary in this class first. Summarize a source and put its information into your paper. Key quotes and ideas, and be sure to cite them with parenthetical citations. Papers that do not contain adequate research will be failing papers. Most of the points in your paper should be supported by more than one source. This is synthesis. There will be an occasional point that maybe you only found it discussed in one source, but there should be some points in your paper where you can say source A says this about this topic and source B says this, and both of those sources come together under a heading that you create in a single paragraph. That's very important. If all of your body paragraphs, when you're really getting into the meat of your paper, only talk about one source each, you're probably only summarizing sources and not synthesizing. Synthesizing is a bringing together to create something new, okay? Make sure that the TS's are in your own words and not a quote or a review of an expert. When you organize a paragraph around an idea rather than around a source, it leaves more room for development and for the inclusion of additional sources who offer views on the same topic. So think about that. Some of you had topic sentences that maybe pulled a quote, so-and-so says, and you give me the quote. Well, what that sets that paragraph up to do is to discuss the quote, okay? Some of you would say, talk about an expert in your first line, and then your paragraph is very short or it's not unified. The better approach is to craft a topic sentence yourself in your own words that asserts an idea, and then use the source to support what you have to say. Remember, experts and the sources that you use, their ideas become in the service of yours. By the time your paper is finished, you're the one making the claims and you're using the experts to support you. Support claims with research, kind of what I was just talking about. If you say the incidence of arson suggests a relationship between poverty and fire starting, you must provide statistics, facts, expert quotes, or summary for an expert to support this. So this is a little bit different than my last point. A few of you have claims or assertions in your paper, and they're good claims. You're making a good point, but you don't go on to support it with outside research. You need to do that because you are not yet an expert. You're considered a student writer. You don't have that kind of credibility or ethos. So to build your ethos, you cite other people who do. If you support a claim with a quote, you always want to discuss the quote. Tease out the key ideas or the key words in that quote that you want to make sure your reader understands the way you do. Here's an example. Think about this in a minute. Is this claim supported? The correlation between varied assessments and student achievement has been proven. First of all, it's in passive voice, so there would be a problem with that. I mark that on your papers a lot. But think about that. Is there any support? Nope, it's just a claim. Okay, now look at this. Improvement in student achievement strongly correlates to teachers' use of varied assessments. There's a good claim. It begins with a claim. Lincoln Dartmouth discussed the results of 100 schools where students were allowed to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways, including speeches, projects, and compositions. The average student demonstrated measurable gains on standardized test scores across the board. Significantly, 7th graders in the study scored 24% higher than their counterparts in similar schools. So there's a lot of support. So we lead here with this claim, okay, or this assertion, and then we support it. The support comes in the form of summarizing the key details from an article. In fact, you can tell that it's a summary because the information I give you comes from pages 20 through 25, okay? That's all made up. I made that all up, but you can see, I wanted you to see using a page range can show, when you use a page range, it can signify to your reader that you are condensing a bunch of information to support your point. Is this claim supported? Apply sunscreen. I think that should be applying. Applying sunscreen has been proven to not only fight aging, but to prevent sun exposure that leads to cancer. Sunscreen is a light lotion that can be applied in an easy manner. Most often people who don't use sunscreen have simply forgotten to apply it since its application is rather easy. Okay, so our initial claim is applying sunscreen has been proven to not only fight aging, but to prevent sun exposure that leads to cancer, but to prevent. I do apologize for my typos. I did create this just for your class, so it's I had to go rather quickly. But you can see all this does is further explain it. It explains what sun lotion is, explains why people don't use it, but it doesn't support the initial claim that it fights aging or skin cancer. Okay, let's see if this one does. Oh, how can I go back? The National Skin Cancer Association declares that cancer rates drastically decrease in populations where subjects have consistently worn sunscreen. Bell and Juergens. So this one takes and weaves the quote into the assertion. Bell and Juergens' research aligns with the consensus of much of those doing research in dermatology and cancer. Notice that Bell and Juergens called the reduction drastic. I wanted you to see this because here begins commentary, and this commentary pulls out a specific word and shows with the reader why it's important, implying a serious improvement over those who choose not to apply. Jones relates that even one serious sunburn increases a person's chances of contracting skin cancer, a sunburn that sunscreen could easily have prevented. Okay, so you can see this paragraph is a good balance between assertion or claim and support. We have quotes pulled from the text, and then we have some summary from the text. All of these things are in support of the initial claim. Craft TSs, or topic sentences, that lead the body of the paragraph. So you want to make sure that your topic sentence, in the same way that a thesis predicts the content of the paper, a topic sentence predicts the content of the body paragraph. Your topic sentence should connect to the thesis or to the prior paragraph. Try this one. Following a paragraph on women making less money at work. Trina was surprised to learn that men at her company were able to afford more time off than she was. So you got a paragraph that's just generally gives some statistics on the fact that women make less money than men. One of the students wrote about this topic. So this first paragraph, I envision it giving facts and statistics to support that. But the paragraph following is an anecdote explaining how one woman learned this at work. So this topic sentence would relate to the prior paragraph. Okay, so a topic sentence should always connect to the thesis or the prior paragraph. Use your own words, not a quote. Use a quote later to support your words. We talked about that. If you have two short points, craft a single topic sentence to cover both. Gender affects both career opportunities and wages. So I'm thinking somebody might write a paragraph about career opportunities but run out of things to say. Maybe it gets short. And wages, I can't imagine not having that much to say about some of these things, but sometimes that happens. And so you can combine 2 points into a single body paragraph. If your topic sentence indicates both are going to be discussed there and they fit together, then you won't have a unity break in the middle of your paragraph when you switch. Okay? Style and grammar. These are the little things that I saw pop up quite a bit in your papers. No free-floating quotes. There really should not be any of them. These are quotes that are dropped into the middle of your paper where the beginning and the end of the sentence is quotation marks. There's no room for the student author's voice in that sentence. This is addressed earlier in the class and also in a sequence for academic writing. So do make sure you don't have free-floating or dropped quotes. I surely marked this on your paper. Make sure you discuss your quotes. Tease out the key words or ideas you want the reader to understand. You're really helping us to see the significance of the quote you've inserted. And likewise, know why you've selected a quote. You don't just put one in there because you need to fill your paper, and you don't put a long one in there because you just want everything they said. You select a quote because they've said it so eloquently that you feel that you can't quite do that. You select a quote that's concise and that just puts it in the words in the perfect order, and that for you to paraphrase it would take many more words. Or you select a quote because it contains such a bizarre or unusual fact that if it weren't quoted, your audience may not believe it. Those are 3 of the most common reasons we quote, and you want to make sure you have a reason for your quote. Avoid passive voice unless you have a rhetorical reason for using it. Passive voice makes the subject appear weak and it defers responsibility. There are good times for using passive voice, but it should be a conscious choice and not just something that you lapse into. So make sure that if you do use passive voice, it's purposeful. I can think of one student who used passive voice, and the subject she was writing about was a weak subject, was something that she thought was being taken advantage of, and I wrote on this person's paper, this could be a good reason to use passive voice. Were you thinking that? So really think that through. I would say 90% of the time the passive voice is just superfluous. It's too much. Try to begin your introduction with a hook, either a strong statement about your topic or something creative, an anecdote that helps us to see the significance of your topic can be useful.